In an age long past, when mankind flourished under the radiance of arcane mastery, the island of Vilbrand was home to a city-state called Nym. Though the history of that age tells of countless wars waged with earth-shattering incantations, it was the brilliant strategic maneuvering of Nym's scholars that allowed their small but formidable army to throw back would-be conquerors time and time again. The Fifth Astral Era was truly an age defined by remarkable advances in the arcane arts. In this age, the city-state of Nym, with its small population, found itself at a distinct disadvantage against its sister city-states, those of Mach with their ruthless black magic and Amdapor with their relentless white magic. Nym's military had no other option than to relegate its few precious sorcerers to a specialized support role within its standing military, the Royal Marines. Rather than just serve as simple healers, however, these men and women were expected to take tactical command of the battlefield and weave spells that maximize the mariners' effectiveness in combat. To answer to the demands of their new position, the Nymian mages learned to bind and control fairies, so that they could entrust these otherworldly creatures with a share of the restorative duties. This allowed these newfound students of war to focus more fully on strategy and tactics. In time, these mages would have the title of scholar bestowed upon them. But even the most brilliant of tacticians could not outmaneuver the tragedy that was to come. As befell many wonders and civilizations of the era, both the military wisdom of Nym and the disciples of its teaching were lost to the colossal floods of the Sixth Umbral Calamity. But nothing stays buried, or in this case drowned, forever. To delve into the path of becoming a scholar, one must already be acquainted with the arcane arts, particularly those of an arcanist. Upon reaching 30th level in these arts, a new opportunity presents itself. Upon returning to the Arcanist Guild in Limsa, we are asked by the guild receptionist Miri if we have any interest in history. Being the learned sorcerer of arcane arts that we are, we say of course. And we are told that an opportunity to study the way of the ancients has presented itself. An uncommonly refined and well-read member of the Marauders Guild has requested an arcanist of exceptional skill. We rush over to the Marauders Guild to pay this well-read marauder a visit. There, we meet Alka-Zolka, the marauder in question. He is fully aware of how unusual it is for a marauder to conduct research, but he's not like the other guys. Instead of rushing blindly into the enemy, he prefers to formulate and execute strategies. As it turns out, Alka is a bit of an archaeologist as well, as he's actually conducting his own research into the mysteries of ancient Nym, which fell to the Great Flood over 1500 years ago. He has recently purchased ancient Nymian tablets and has the intention of translating them in order to unravel their secrets, and he needs an experienced arcanist to assist with his analysis. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a problem. Said tablets were stolen as they were on their way to Limsa. Fortunately, he has a suspicion that the thieves are at the Raincatcher Gully docks and asks us to accompany him. We then head to eastern Noscea to catch some filthy thieves. After making quick work of the thieves, we recover Alka-Zolka's stolen tablets, along with a strange crystal. From this stone, an otherworldly creature appears. Alka consults the tablets, revealing that it is indeed one of the familiars of an ancient Nymian scholar of Eld, a faerie. The tablet states that the sunlight of Eos doth soothe and shield, and the moonlight of Selene doth silence and strengthen. Alka is ecstatic at the discovery of both the faerie and the long-lost magical arts of the Nymian scholars. He asks us to meet him back at the Marauders Guild, where he tells us that the strange crystal we found earlier was actually the soul stone of a scholar of ages past, and it contains the wisdom of these long-forgotten sorcerers. Alka strives to translate more of the Nymian text and will let us know if he finds any additional information. It is here and now that we utilize the knowledge and wisdom within this soul crystal to enhance our powers and become a scholar. Though we still have much to learn. Upon returning to Alka-Zolka, he ponders as to why we do not have access to all of the spells of the ancient Nymian scholars, and he thinks it may be due to our faerie's memories being not fully unlocked, and hypothesizes that the knowledge should be inside the soul crystal, and it just needs some kind of jumpstart to trigger the memories. So, we travel to where Nym once stood and see its floating remains, investigating forgotten whispers of the civilization that once was, until at last, the memories of the faerie are rekindled Upon returning back to Limsa Lominsa, Alka is relieved to hear that the theory panned out, and suggests that the faerie is their own individual, with their own thoughts, feelings, and memories. He'll call upon us again if he has successfully translated more of the tablet's information. Meanwhile, we unlock a new scholarly art in the spell Succor. As we later return to Alka, he states that since Nymian scholars and marauders once fought side by side, we'll have an opportunity to test that effectiveness, as the Marauders Guild has just gotten word that a Tonberry has been spotted over at Camp Bronze Lake, and we have been tasked to dispatch it. He claims that the Tonberries dwell within the Wanderer's Palace, an ancient Nymian temple, and could very well have overran the temple even before the collapse of Nym. Arriving at Camp Bronze Lake, Alka is set to go. Together, along with our fairy companion, we confront the Tonberry atop a monument that overlooks the Wanderer's Palace. Our fairy reacts in a way that we have not yet seen before, shocked, almost as if she recognizes the creature. The Tonberry faces us and seems to mutter something almost incomprehensible, before it is overtaken with murderous rancor and pushes to attack. After besting the Tonberry in battle, Alka-Zolka rushes in for the finishing blow. But, to the surprise of everyone, our fairy stops the marauder from finishing his attack, allowing time for the Tonberry to retreat. Alka is none too pleased, but realizes that there's nothing that can be done now that the Tonberry is gone, and bids us return to Limsa Lominsa. Though he's disappointed that his quarry got away, he is, however, very pleased in that he was able to confirm the viability of Nymian tactics. Upon returning to Alka, he states that he has uncovered gravings that depict the garments of ancient Nymian scholars, but wishes to further gauge their authenticity by recreating them and seeing our fairy's reaction. For that, though, he's going to need help. Alka isn't exactly a weaver, so he has enlisted the assistance of 4 artisans: Redolent Rose and Serendipity in Ul'dah, and Jiva and Belly in Gridania. We procure materials and visit these artisans and are presented with 4 items of attire: the scholar's motorboard, glove, culottes, and boots. An almost complete set. Though Alka still needs a bit more time to work out the gown, though it seems our fairy agrees that we look more like an Nymian scholar of old now, though she is still yet to regain all of her memories. When we next meet up with Alka-Zolka, he states that Nymian scholars did not let the restorative magics go to waste, and used their talents to combat a mysterious plague that threatened to take over all of Nym. So he suggests that a similar act of charity might awaken more of our fairy's memories. So we head to Camp Bronze Lake to help some of the sick and wounded recover. As it turns out, this does indeed help our fairy regain more of her memory, and we unlock the spell Lustrate. We have a knack for showing up at the right time, because the next time we visit Alka, he has another urgent request. Another Tonberry has been spotted near Camp Bronze Lake. He is determined not to have a repeat of what happened last time, so we enlist the help of 2 additional marauders to boost our ranks. The creature will be felled this day for sure. When we arrive, we find the Tonberry at the same place we encountered it last time, seemingly in some sort of trance. It doesn't notice us yet, and Alka plans to use this to our advantage. We sneak up on the Tonberry, and it turns around to face us, muttering something about its son, and urges us to stand back. Instead of attacking, however, it speedily retreats back into the Wanderer's Palace, and so we venture forth within to confront it. As we enter, we are confronted by more Tonberries and the rancor that dwells within them. Eventually, we find our target and battle them once again. And just like last time, as Alka is about to strike the creature down, our fairy intervenes. Alka cannot understand why the fairy would protect this demon. The fairy looks to us, pleading. So instead of attacking ourselves, we heal the Tonberry, and our trusty fairy lends her magic to the effort as well. As the once wounded creature gets up, we can, for the first time, clearly understand the words it speaks. It calls our fairy Lily, and refers to it as its son, and asks who has summoned her. This is odd. This Tonberry seems to actually know and be familiar with our fairy. After some conversation, it becomes absolutely clear on what this creature is, or who they used to be. An actual Nymian scholar of Eld, transformed into this form by a mysterious plague that swept through Nym, the Green Death. Our former scholar's name was Sarito Carito before the sickness took him. He recounts how the scholars of Nym tried to halt the spread of the plague and find a cure, but in time they too fell victim to it. It was Nym who sealed the infected within the Wanderer's palace. Though the infected were disfigured and turned into tonberries, their minds remain intact. However, when those who once called you kin began to deny you and despise you, no one would be able to contain that amount of anger and resentment. Anger, which eventually turns to rancor. Through the resplendent light of seeing his former faerie, Lily, Sarito is once again free from his hate. Upon hearing of all this, Alka has a completely reasonable reaction and breaks into tears. As we all turn to make our way out of the Wanderer's Palace, maybe through the Echo or some other power, we see a vision of Sarito Carito as they once were, a true Nymian scholar. Sarito later explains that he does not know how his soul crystal came into our possession, but he is glad that it did, as unfortunately, the same sickness that robbed him of his body also took his magics, and thus Lily, away from him as well. Since he is no longer able to summon the faerie or cast his magics, he entrusts us to wield the magics of the scholar and carry on that legacy. With that, he bequeaths to us the last piece of our raiment, a scholar's gown, as well as the knowledge of his most versatile scholarly art, sacred soil. Though we have freed Sarito Carito, there are still countless others of his kin who have yet to see the light. He will not, abandon them to their fates. While not directly part of the Scholar Questline, it is very important to the overall lore that we cover the events of what occurs when we venture deeper into the Wanderer's Palace. When we arrive, we fight through wave after wave of tonberries and other creatures, and run away from the towering tonberry stalkers, to eventually come face to face with the Tonberry King, the leader of all tonberries. As it turns out, the Tonberry King was once a very powerful high mage of Nym. His unbridled rage turned him into the source of the rancor that has tormented the Tonberry population of the Wanderer's Palace. After defeating the Tonberry King, many of the tonberries have since lost their anger and resentment. Though they remained in their tonberry forms, the former Nymians had at least regained their minds. For a time, anyway. Some time passes, and together with Alkazoka, we receive a summons from Sarito Carito to meet him near the ruins of the Wanderer's Palace. As we meet Sarito, he recalls how he rejoined his fellow former Nymians, and for a time they were at peace after the Tonberry King's defeat. However, shortly afterwards, the rancor that once gripped the population started to remanifest. For now, he has a plan to seal the worst of the afflicted within a section of the Wanderer's Palace, and now seeks to find a cure for this illness on his honor as a scholar. For now, though, he needs help to procure keystones in order to create the seal, so he can buy some time to research a cure. That's where we come in, as Sarito cannot venture forth on his own, as he still looks like a tonberry and is bound to be hunted. We accept, and Alka makes for the keystone near the banks of the lake, while we search in outer Noscea, near the ruins of Nym. After some digging, we find the keystone. We also find that the ancient guardians that were once protecting it are still very much active. But we are the Warrior of Light after all, and we make quick work of it and return to Sarito along with Alkazoka. Sarito tells us that these two keystones will not function without a third, grand keystone, but he doesn't quite know yet where it is. But he will continue his search and let us know when he finds it. Of course, it doesn't take long for Sarito to find the last keystone, and he sends us along our way to the ruins in the east to meet up with Alkazoka. And wouldn't you know it, another guardian is there waiting for us. We team up and turn the guardian to rubble, and then make our way back to Sarito with the grand keystone in hand. He thanks us for our trouble, and we learn a new spell, Indomitability. When next we meet with Sarito Carito, he seems to be at his wit's end. His research into finding a cure for this sickness is stalled. He explains that the plague upon his people came from the ocean, when sailors lost in a storm drifted off to a desert island in the South Seas, where they met a native tribe of Lalafels. This tribe tended their wounds and repaired the damage to their ship, and sent them off with a gift, an ornate amphora. Upon hearing this, Alcazolca realizes that the amphora might actually be the source of the plague, as these sailors were fine until they reached the city of Nym. Cerrito thinks the theory may have some merit, and tells us that the amphora was put on display within the royal halls, and Alcazolca knows exactly where that is. It's a slim chance that even a shard of the amphora remains, but it's a chance that has to be taken. We search all throughout the ruins of Nym, turning over every leaf, every fallen stone, until we find something half covered with soil below us. It's the amphora, and still in one piece. However, when we get closer to inspect it, we are ambushed by 2 Voidsent. We quickly dispatch them and return the empty amphora to Cerrito, who is as shocked as we are to see it fully intact. We also mention our encounter with the Voidsent beings, which worries him greatly. He states that the Voidsent are drawn to the magics of their own kind, and he theorizes that a strong Voidsent was once sealed in the amphora itself. Upon noticing a binding sigil cut into the bottom of the amphora, his theory is proven. The illnesses, the plague, the transformation into tonberries, all of this was the work of Mach. Cerrito needs more time to research this. Later on, we return to Cerrito. He is pleased to see that our exposure to the amphora did not cause us to transform ourselves. He thinks that the Voidsent that was once sealed there in the vessel summoned the 2 Voidsent that attacked us to distract us while it fled, invisible. Cerrito thinks that the once sealed Voidsent has grown weak in all of the years it was sealed in the amphora, but it could quickly regain its strength, putting the entire realm in danger of contracting the Green Death if it does so. We need to destroy it now, before it can regain its power, and studying its corpse may lead to a cure for the tonberries. However, Cerrito needs some time to be able to track the Voidsent's whereabouts. Fortunately, to pass time, Cerrito has enlisted the help of an old friend to better our skills in battle, Holga Tolga, one of the greatest drill instructors of the Nymian military. Cue training montage as we will get stronger and claim victory, come hell or high water. Cerrito is having trouble locating the Voidsent, almost like it was created to circumvent Nymian magics. He hopes that more modern academics might have the answer he does not, and asks us to procure some tomes that may help him. Luckily, Alcazolca has an old friend that works in the Thaumaturge's Guild in Ul'dah that may have just what we were looking for. We go to pay them a visit while Alka keeps on training. We speak to Alka's friend, Yayake, about what we were after. But unfortunately, it looks like the tome we're after was checked out by someone belonging to the Thaumaturge's Guild, but never returned it, and has not been heard from for some time. Yayake tells us that he ventured into the western highlands of Korthus, and that was his last known location. So, to Korthus we go, and we inquire on our missing person. Someone tells us that they had chartered a boat downriver, but that boat was sunk during the 7th Umbral Calamity. The wreck still stands, however. We go search the wreckage of the ship and retrieve our missing person's belongings. After bringing these to Cerrito, we find the book among the possessions. With this, Cerrito tirelessly goes back to his research. Cerrito Corrido finally devises a way to track the invisible Voidsent, as when it feeds on the ether of other creatures, it leaves behind a specific ethereal trail that can be followed. With the help of our trusty fairy companion, we begin our search. We start in the ruins of the floating city of Nym, tracking the beast to Zelma's Run, then finally to Camp Bronze Lake. Alka comes to a conclusion. The Voidsent seeks to spread its plague through the wounded Maelstrom soldiers using the healing waters of the hot springs there. As we arrive, we quickly get to work, evacuating the soldiers and using Lily's light to sniff out the Voidsent. After checking numerous ethereal signatures, we finally locate it, and it tries to run. But we're not letting it get away. After all this time, we finally reveal the true cause of the plague that ended Nym, Bitoso, the Green Death itself. During the fierce battle, the new Royal Marinians are met with those of the old, as Cerrito Corrido and his Nymian companions come to back us up. With their combined might, we lay low Bitoso, ridding the realm of its corrupting influence once and for all. Nym, at long last, has been avenged. Cerrito Corrido gathers the remains of the Voidsent, hoping that with careful research, it can yield a cure to the Tonberry Plague. Later on, we meet up with Alcazolca at the Marauders Guild, having received another request for aid for Cerrito Corrido. We then head to the ruins of Nym to speak with him. Cerrito tells us that he has finished studying the remains of Bitoso, and he believes a cure may be within reach. At this point, though, it's just a means to halt the spread of the sickness, not a means to reverse its effects. But this is actually not the reason that Cerrito called us here today. One of his research assistants, Satoto, has suddenly vanished. Even if their rancor is gone, they still look like tonberries, and Cerrito is worried about the harm that will befall his friend, so he asks us to find them and escort them back. We first check Maelstrom Command to see if a tonberry was registered to the hunt. Unfortunately, we don't find anything concrete until a friend of Alka's, Rashad, appears bearing news that a small odd-looking stowaway appeared on a ferry and swiftly ran away somewhere in the Vesper Bay. This could very well be our missing research assistant. We head to Vesper Bay and inquire about the stowaway. We find some promising leads, but are also informed that the Brass Blades, the military force of Ul'dah, are looking for the stowaway as well. Alkazolka makes his way to Ul'dah to see if he can uncover any more through his contacts, and he asks us to return to Cerrito Corrido to update him on the situation. We meet back up with Alkazolka at the Marauders Guild, where he tells us that his contacts have given him news of Satoto's possible location, somewhere in the Black Shroud. We both head to Camp Tranquil to begin our search. We decide to split up to cover more ground, with Alka taking the northern area while we take the south. We search and search, with little to show for our efforts, until we come across a group of poachers surrounding an unconscious Tonberry. The poachers are not too keen on us taking their target and move to attack. We make quick work of them and heal the injured Tonberry. This does indeed appear to be Satoto. As we cast Adlokium on her, she calls out to her father. Alkazolka meets up with us right as this is happening and immediately seems to develop a little crush on the young Tonberry girl. After commenting on her beauty, he inquires about what motivated her to travel all this way. She recalls on how in the days before Nim's collapse, her father, a scholar and royal marine, was dispatched on a mission to infiltrate the city-state of Amdapor. While she is under no illusions that her father might still be alive, she does wish to find something that she can use to remember him by, a keepsake of sorts. We, as fellow Royal Marines, offer to help Satoto in her search, so we head back to Camp Tranquil in order to plan out how to proceed. Now that Satoto is fully recovered, our search can begin. We learn that Satoto's father infiltrated Amdapor on a secret mission to return with a cure for the plague that had gripped Nym, only he never did return. Satoto hopes that some of his belongings may remain within the ruins of Amdapor. Alka theorizes that Satoto's father, if caught, would have been transported to a secure location for interrogation, and the most secure location at the time would have been Amdapor Keep. So we venture forth into the keep, where we do find some clues. A tattered tome tells of a planned interrogation of a Nymian spy that was to take place in the moot hall of the keep, and that his belongings were stored away in one of their mana idols. So it's time to smash some idols. We eventually make our way through the keep and come face to face with a Mana Snatcher, a monstrous void-sent creature that has been feeding on the mana idols. We dispatch it quickly and continue our search. Eventually, we find a Nymian grimoire, along with other effects. Satoto identifies these as belonging to her father along with something else, her father's soul crystal. Satoto attempts to summon her father's faerie, Lilac. However, Satoto's ether has been changed by the plague. When the summoning backfires, it unleashes a sphere of purple light, and Satoto drops unconscious. We bring her back to Camp Tranquil to try to diagnose Satoto's condition. She seems to be in some sort of coma. We are met by Landinal, a member of the Wood Whalers, spearman of Gridania's defense force. Landinal gives us his aid to at least give Satoto a place to rest while we find out how to wake her. Alkazolka returns to Bronze Lake to give an update to Cerrito, while we tend to Satoto. After some time, Satoto still hasn't stirred. So we go to speak with Cerrito Corrido. He thinks that because of Satoto's altered state, she only managed a partial summoning of the faerie, and that all of her ether fled from her body upon trying to summon Lilac, causing her to fall unconscious. In order for her to awaken, we need to track down the purple light and destroy it. We update Alkazolka and Landinal back in Camp Tranquil. Landinal states that he's gotten reports from other Wood Whalers that the purple light has been seen wandering the forest, so we begin our search, with Alkazolka taking Snakemole while we take the upper paths. Unfortunately, our search ends in vain, but just as we meet up with Alka, who also didn't have any luck, Landonal shows up and says one of his men was just attacked by the faerie, which then swiftly made its way into the lost city of Amdapor. Before we can chase after it, however, he needs to get permission from the Order of the Twin Adder. Landonal departs to do so while we make preparations. Landonal eventually returns with permissions granted, and he joins us as we enter the lost city, where we immediately see the partially summoned faerie, who retreats further. We follow the purple light throughout the city, almost as if it's leading us somewhere, all the while facing the ancient stone golems of Amdapor's defenses. The faerie suddenly takes over the form of Amdapor's strongest stone guardian, Karibu, and attacks. After a fierce battle, we vanquish the guardian and the half-summoned faerie along with it. We hope that this will return Satoto's ether to her, and she'll be awake by the time we return. As we turn to leave, however, our own faerie stops us and flies over to the now dormant guardian, where it has dropped some kind of gemstone. It seems important, so we pocket it for later. Upon returning to Camp Tranquil, we see Landonal approaching, along with a now awake Satoto, who has no memory of what occurred right before she fell unconscious. Alka wonders why Lilac was drawn to the lost city, and not being able to think of any good theories, he asks us. We hold out the gemstone that we recovered, and Alka thinks maybe Lilac was trying to lead us to this very stone. He suggests we bring it to Cerrito Corrido for analysis, so the group heads back to Bronze Lake. Upon inspection, Cerrito claims that the stone contains concentrated white magics, and most likely acted as the core for the stone guardian Karibu. This could potentially be used to cure any manner of disease or sickness, maybe even the Green Death. Normally, a faerie that is not fully manifested would be incapable of being controlled by its summoner, but just maybe, a remnant of Satoto's father's ether was still within Lilac and retained his strong will to see Satoto saved. Cerrito thanks us for bringing Satoto back safely and begins work on analyzing the gemstone further, once again hopeful to cure the affliction. Satoto apologizes for all the trouble she's caused and thanks us both, while proclaiming to Alcazolca the fact that he treats her like the young girl she used to be is what she likes most about him. But that sentiment goes over his head. Satoto asks to join the Royal Marines the next time they go out training, and feeling hopeful for the future, hoping that one day she might be able to muster the strength to share her true feelings with Alka. Much later, we return to Alcazolca at the Marauders Guild, who is working on every opportunity to hone his skills. He has an appointment with Cerrito Corrido to review strategies and conduct more training, and asks us to join him. We do so and meet up with Cerrito and Satoto at Bronze Lake. Satoto has come to join in the training exercises, but still states that she is hampered by her inability to summon a faerie, and once again laments her current form. But first, Cerrito asks us to regale them with our recent endeavors, and we tell them about our adventures in a parallel universe, a story for another time. This story, however, sparks something in Cerrito. If they could apply a high concentration of ether through the gemstone, maybe, just maybe, they can cure their own affliction. Cerrito asks Alka to procure some supplies from a goldsmith, while he asks us to retrieve some revival root from Aide's Trents in the Snake Mold. We manage to get what we need, and Alcazolca returns successfully as well. Cerrito contemplates the danger of this, as they are unable to test it properly unless it is tested on a Tonberry themselves, with the possibility that the subject may end up becoming worse than they were before. Satoto bravely suggests that they test the cure on her, as she is willing, and she states that Cerrito is needed to continue this research should it fail. Alcazolca does not agree with this, and Satoto states that it's her choice, not his. Before the disagreement can be sparked further, Cerrito suggests a rest so that they may gather their thoughts. Upon speaking to Cerrito, he confirms that Satoto is quite enamored with Alcazolca, but is disinclined to pursue the matter due to her condition. He suggests that we go speak with her. We do so, and we get Satoto to speak about her true feelings for Alka, where she admits herself that she is in love with him. She wants to do more than just live, however. She wants to help people, and she cannot do this as she is now. This is what drives her to the cure. As she was one of the last to be infected, the plague should be less advanced within her. She thinks that if a cure were to work, it may have the best chance with her. She admits she is frightened at the thought of it failing. But if there is any chance to save her people, she will not ignore it. We agree with her reasoning, and we make our way back to Cerrito and meet up with Alka. After a little heart-to-heart and Satoto explaining her reasonings, Alka vows to stay by her, come hell or high water. Cerrito explains that for this to work, Satoto will drink the compound developed by Cerrito to destabilize the ethereal composition of her body, at which point Alka must stand ready with the gemstone recovered from Amdapor to act as a focus. For our role, we will channel our restorative magic, along with those of our faerie, through the gemstone to amplify them. This should, in theory, allow Satoto to be exposed with enough curative ether to attune to it, and set her body back to normal. So we begin the work. And for a moment, it looks like there might be something going wrong and causing pain to Satoto. But Alkazolka gives her words of encouragement and she pushes through. A blinding light then engulfs the immediate area, and as it fades we see before us a young Lalafellan girl, a fully restored Satoto. While she never expected to have a second chance at life, she intends to enjoy it, and one day confess her feelings to Alkazolka. She also intends to relearn the scholarly arts and one day summon her father's faerie, Lilac. But for now, she has much training to do, and she rushes off to join Alka. Cerrito, for the first time in a while, finds himself at a loss for words. Having labored for so long and encountered so many roadblocks along the way, he finally has a means to save his people. Though he needs to keep Satoto's new condition monitored, he is once again hopeful for the future of all Tonberries.